In this second video on intervals, I'm going to talk about perfect, augmented, and diminished intervals. So perfect intervals. Perfect is a quality like major or minor. It tells you what kind of interval you've got. Perfect intervals, however, have mostly one version of themselves. So consider the octave, which is another way of saying the eighth, a interval that traverses 8 steps. So for instance, C up to C. So C4 to C5 is 12 total half steps, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And this will be true with all octaves. So A to A is also 12 half steps. So any time you go from one note to a octave above, it's going to be perfect. It's perfect because it always has 12 half steps. Your perfect intervals are octaves, fifths, fourths, and unisons, which are firsts. Let's look at C to G, which is 7 half steps. It's also a fifth. C, D, E, F, G. Fifth, 7 half steps. If you go D to A, it's also 7 half steps. E to B is also 7 half steps. So you keep coming up with 7 half steps, and that's why we call this perfect, because there are so many of the same quality. And the same thing is true with fourths. C to F, 5 half steps, it's a fourth. D to G, 5 half steps, a fourth. E to A, 5 half steps, a fourth. Now there's one exception. F to B is 6 half steps, and that's too big for a perfect fourth. And similarly, B to F is also 6 half steps, which is too small for a perfect fifth. So to make a standard interval bigger or smaller, you make it augmented or diminished. So this one lone fourth that's too big to be perfect, we call an augmented fourth. And this one lone fifth that's too small to be perfect, we call that a diminished fifth. And then finally, augmented can also be used to make a major interval bigger, and diminished can be used to make a minor interval smaller. So a major third, C to E, becomes an augmented third if you go C to E sharp. A minor third, D to F, becomes a diminished third if you go D to F flat. We can imagine it like this, where if you've got a perfect interval that are your unisons, fourths, fifths, and octaves, if you make them bigger or smaller, they become augmented or diminished. And then if you have a major-minor interval, which are your seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, if you make a major interval bigger, it becomes augmented. If you make a major interval smaller, it becomes minor. And then if you make a minor interval smaller, it becomes diminished. And here you've got all of your possible intervals. And this will be in the reading, but notice how sometimes you can have the same size interval. For instance, an augmented second is 3 half steps, but if you spell it different, it could become a minor third. So C to E flat, for instance, would be a minor third because C to E is a third, and C to E flat makes it a minor third. C to D is a second, and C to D sharp is an augmented second.